The coffee tasted like dirt. Mark was going on about some sci-fi movie, something about the physics of the warp drive not making any sense. He was waving his hands around, sketching invisible equations in the air between us. He gets like this. His engineering brain kicks in, and he has to dissect everything, find the logic. Usually, I find it kind of charming. Today, I just wanted him to shut up. My world had shrunk to the 5-inch screen of my phone, resting on the sticky table between our cups. The email sat there, unopened, but the subject line was burned into my retinas. Subject: notice regarding allegation of academic misconduct. My stomach felt hollow, like someone had reached inside and just scooped everything out. My entire future, every late night fueled by cheap coffee, every single word I'd ever bled onto a page, it all came down to this stupid, official-looking email. So the energy cost would be astronomical, you see, Mark said, finally noticing my silence. Amy, you with me? I couldn't look at him. I just pushed the phone across the table. He picked it up, his brow furrowing as he read. The happy, analytical light in his eyes flickered and died. "What is this?" he asked, his voice low. "Dr. Albright," I said. My own voice sounded thin, reedy. "He's accusing me of plagiarism, my final thesis." "What? No. Why?" "He says it's too derivative, too outlandish, that a student couldn't possibly have come up with a story like that on her own." I let out a short, ugly laugh that was closer to a sob. He thinks I stole it from some obscure horror novel he's never read. The thesis was my life's work, my magnum opus, if a 21-year-old is allowed to have one. It was about the shed, about the owl, about the night that carved me into the person I am today. I could see the memory playing out behind my eyes, sharp and clear, as it was 13 years ago. The dusty air of the old shed behind our house, thick with the smell of rust and damp earth. Me, 8 years old, playing hide and seek with ghosts only I could see. Then the flutter of wings from the broken skylight. It wasn't a normal bird. It was huge, impossibly large, and it didn't move right. It unfolded itself in the gloom like a piece of broken living origami. And its eyes, they weren't bird eyes. They were bright, steady, and yellow, like two small, unblinking light bulbs staring right through me. I remember scrambling backward, my bare feet slipping on the dirt floor. My back hit the old tool cabinet, hard. There was a clatter of metal from above, and then a searing, cold line of pain across my chest. I looked down. A small, rusty hand scythe had fallen, its curved blade kissing my skin. I still have the scar, a pale crescent moon just below my left collarbone. "It's about the owl, isn't it?" Mark said, sliding the phone back to me. I nodded, my hand instinctively going to my chest, tracing the familiar shape of the scar through my t-shirt. "It's all I've ever written about, Mark. You know that. It's my story. The scar is real. It's proof." I know, he said, reaching for my hand. His was warm and steady. Mine was ice cold and trembling. "Look, maybe it's a misunderstanding. Maybe he just thinks you were heavily inspired. We can fight this. We'll show him your old journals, your drafts." "He doesn't want to see them," I mumbled. "He's already made up his mind." Mark sighed, that patient, logical sound that usually calmed me down. Right now, it just made my teeth ache. "Okay, well, there's a hearing, right? You just have to tell them the truth. Tell them exactly what happened. They can't punish you for writing about your own life." I pulled my hand away. I wanted to scream at him. It wasn't just my life. It was the thing, the one true, undeniable thing that everything else was built on. And that old bastard Albright was trying to tell me it wasn't mine, that it wasn't even real. I felt a hot, stupid tear slide down my cheek and wiped it away angrily. I wanted to punch his perfectly reasonable, logical face. That night, sleep was a joke. I sat by the window of my apartment, staring out at the city lights 12 floors below. My laptop was open, the thesis glowing on the screen. I was rereading my own words, trying to find the sentence, the phrase, the single adjective that made it all sound like a lie. I needed to be ready for the hearing. I needed my story to be a fortress. My eyes were gritty from exhaustion. The city sprawled out beneath me, a glittering carpet of orange and white, but all I saw were the dark spaces in between. That's when I saw it. Just a flicker, a smudge of motion in my peripheral vision, just outside the glass. It was so fast I was sure I'd imagined it. A trick of the light, a reflection from inside the room. Has to be. I mean, this is the 12th floor. Nothing is just zipping past my window. It's just me being paranoid, stressed out. I rubbed my eyes and went back to the screen. Then I heard the sound. It was faint, so faint I almost missed it. A single sharp tick against the window pane, like a pebble had been thrown from a great distance. I froze, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. The building was old. It made noises. Pipes groaned, the wind whistled. It was nothing. But then came the other sound. A soft, dragging scrape, faint but unmistakable. The sound of something sharp and hard being pulled across the concrete ledge just outside my window. Skr. Pause. Skr. My breath caught in my throat. My heart started doing a frantic, clumsy drum solo against my ribs. I stood up slowly, every muscle in my body screaming at me to just stay put. Don't look. Don't you dare look. I crept toward the window, my feet silent on the cheap carpet. My own reflection stared back at me, a pale, wide-eyed ghost. Beyond her, there was nothing, just the black sky and the distant, indifferent lights. The scraping stopped. I stood there for what felt like an hour, my forehead pressed against the cool glass, scanning the darkness until my eyes watered. Nothing, not a damn thing. My phone buzzed on the desk, making me jump so hard I nearly yelped. It was Mark. "You okay?" he asked. "Couldn't sleep." "Mark," I whispered, my voice cracking. I think there's something outside my window." I told him about the shadow, the ticking sound, the scraping. I could hear him trying not to laugh. I could practically picture him on the other end, shaking his head with that fond, exasperated smile of his. "Amy, honey," he said gently, "it's the wind or the building settling. You're on the 12th floor. What could possibly be out there? A rock-climbing raccoon?" His logic was a cold, wet blanket. It should have been comforting. It wasn't. "It sounded like claws," I said, feeling stupid even as the words left my mouth. "It's an old building. The sounds travel in weird ways. You're just exhausted and stressed about this whole Albright thing. You're scaring yourself." I stared out into the empty night. He was right. Of course he was right. My mind was my own worst enemy right now, turning every gust of wind into a monster. "Yeah," I said, trying to make my voice sound normal. "Yeah, you're probably right. Get some sleep, Amy. It'll all seem better in the morning." We said goodnight and hung up. I took one last look out the window, then drew the curtains shut, plunging the room into darkness. Maybe he was right. I just needed to sleep. The next few days were a special kind of hell made of paper and pixels. The disciplinary committee sent an official summons, a PDF attachment that felt heavier than a block of concrete. The hearing was scheduled for Friday. I tried emailing Albright again, a pathetic, rambling message pleading for him to just talk to me. His reply came back in under a minute. "The truth will be made clear at the hearing." That was it. The son of a bitch. He wasn't even going to give me the courtesy of a conversation. It was just sentence passed. Now we wait for the execution. I stopped sleeping. Or I tried to sleep, but my body wouldn't cooperate. I'd lie in the dark, my eyes wide open, replaying every line of my thesis, every word of Albright's accusation. The pressure was a physical thing, a weight on my chest that made it hard to breathe. And the shadow came back. It was more than just a flicker now. It was bolder. Sometimes I'd be staring at my laptop screen and I'd catch it in the reflection. A shape, darker than the night outside, just hovering at the edge of the window frame. Not moving, just there, like it was waiting, patient. I'd whip my head around, my heart hammering against my ribs, but there was never anything there. Of course not. What could be there? Then the scraping sound started again. It wasn't faint anymore. It wasn't the sound of a branch or the wind. No, this was specific, deliberate. It was the sound of metal on glass. A high-pitched, nails-on-a chalkboard shriek that came in short, sharp bursts. Scree, scree, scree. Each one was a knife twist in my gut. I started sleeping with all the lights on, the heavy curtains pulled tight. It didn't matter. The sound cut right through the fabric, right through the hum of the city, and drilled straight into my brain. I was losing it. I had to be. This was what a breakdown felt like, right? My mind, overloaded with stress, was just inventing monsters to match the one in my professional life. That had to be it. It was the only explanation that made sense. The night before the hearing, I was a wreck. I hadn't eaten a real meal in 2 days, and my hands had a permanent tremor. I needed to see a friendly face, even a digital one. I called Mark. His face popped up on my laptop screen, full of concern. "God, Amy, you look terrible." "Gee, thanks," I said, trying for a smile that felt like cracking old paint. "Just what a girl wants to hear. I'm serious. Have you slept at all?" "I'm fine," I lied. "Just preparing, going over my notes. I need to be perfect tomorrow." We talked for a while. He tried to reassure me, told me about his day, about some stupid problem with a circuit board. I tried to listen, I really did, but my eyes kept flicking to my own reflection in the corner of his screen. I looked pale, haunted. The dark circles under my eyes were like bruises. And then his screen froze. The little loading wheel started spinning in the middle of his face. His voice cut out. "Amy, can you hear me? The connection's choppy." The image stuttered, breaking into pixelated squares. For a split second, the screen went black. Then my own reflection filled the entire display. It was dark, a bit grainy from the webcam's low light. I could see myself sitting at my desk. I could see the lamp on the table behind me. I could see my tightly drawn curtains. And I could see the thing standing behind me. It wasn't a shadow. It was a shape. Huge, black, and pressed right up against the window on the other side of the curtains. It was tall, impossibly tall, its form filling the entire frame of the window. It had no features I could make out, just an overwhelming blackness, except for 2 points of light, right where its eyes should be. They weren't yellow like I remembered. They were red, like the hot, dying embers of a fire. They burned through the reflection, through the screen, and stared directly at me. A scream tore itself out of my throat, raw and animal. I threw myself backwards, my chair tipping over and crashing to the floor. I scrambled away on my hands and knees, my eyes locked on the window. I ripped the curtains aside. Nothing. Just the black night sky and the lights of the city, 12 floors below. The glass was clean. The ledge was empty. My laptop, still on the floor, crackled to life. Amy, what the hell was that? What happened? The screen went crazy. I couldn't see anything." My breath came in ragged, painful gasps. I couldn't form words. My entire body was shaking uncontrollably. A mouse, anything, lie. "A mouse," I choked out.
grabbing onto my desk to pull myself up. There was a mouse. It scared me. A mouse? Jesus, you screamed like you were being murdered. He sounded worried, but also skeptical. I could hear the logical gears turning in his head again. It's just stress. She's cracking. I'm fine, I said, my voice trembling so hard the words barely came out. I'm okay. I should go. I need to get some rest before tomorrow. I didn't wait for him to reply. I slammed the laptop shut. I stood there in the middle of my brightly lit room, my back pressed against the wall, staring at the empty window. My heart felt like it was going to beat its way out of my chest. I wasn't crazy. I was not crazy. I saw it. It was real. The owl, the shed, the thing outside my window, they were connected. They had to be. I couldn't lose this hearing. This wasn't just about my degree anymore. This was about my sanity. I needed someone to stand with me, to say, yes, it happened. Yes, it's real. My fingers, clumsy and shaking, found my phone. I scrolled through my contacts until I found his name. I pressed call. It rang twice before he picked up. Amy, it's late. Is everything all right? Dad, I said, my voice a quiet, desperate plea. Dad, I need you to come to the university tomorrow for my hearing.
There was a pause on the other end. I could hear the faint sound of a TV in the background. The hearing about that paper? Amy, I told you, I don't think... Please, Dad, I begged, cutting him off. The words spilled out of me in a torrent. I need you there. I need you to be my witness. You have to tell them. Tell them about the old house. Tell them about the shed, about the owl, about everything, just like it happened. Another silence, longer this time. It stretched out, filled with a static I couldn't place. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded off, hesitant. All right, honey, he said slowly. Okay, I'll be there. The room was cold. Not just air conditioner cold, but the kind of sterile chill that seeps into your bones from polished wood and emotionless faces. 3 of them sat across the table. 2 men, 1 woman, all in dark suits. Their expressions were identical, a bland, practiced neutrality that was somehow worse than open hostility. They looked at me like I was a specimen, a problem to be categorized and filed away. Dr. Albright sat off to the side, near the window. He had his arms crossed over his chest, a posture of finality. He wouldn't look at me. He just stared at a point on the wall just above my head, his jaw set. The self-righteous prick. He'd already decided I was guilty. This was just theater. My dad was sitting a few rows behind me. I could feel his presence more than see it, a nervous energy radiating from the back of the room. I took a breath. My hands, hidden under the table, were shaking. I pressed my palms flat against my thighs to try and stop them. It didn't work. Miss Vance, the chairman said. He was a tired-looking man with graying hair and a voice to match. We have read your thesis. We have read Dr. Albright's report. Now, we would like to hear it in your own words. Please, explain the origins of your story. My own words. Right. As if the ones I'd bled onto the page for the last year weren't enough. I started to speak. My voice came out as a croak. I cleared my throat and tried again. It's not a story. It's a memory. I told them everything. I didn't just recite the events. I pulled them from that dark corner of my mind and laid them bare on the polished table between us. I made them smell the damp earth and rotting wood of the shed. I made them feel the splinters in the old floorboards under my bare feet. The light was wrong, I said, my eyes unfocused, seeing the shed instead of the sterile room. The moon came through a hole in the roof, and it made everything look silver and sick. The dust motes dancing in the beam looked like tiny ghosts. I described the sound, the sudden heavy thud from above, the frantic scratching of claws on old shingles, then the crash as it broke through the rotten wood of the attic window. It wasn't a bird, not really. It was too big. The wingspan filled the whole space, blocking out the moonlight.
It was just this huge black shape, and the sound of its wings wasn't flapping. It was like wet leather sheets being beaten together, a heavy, thick sound that you felt in your chest. I paused, my own breathing becoming shallow. I could feel the phantom pressure in my lungs, the same childhood terror rising in my throat. And its eyes, they weren't bird eyes. They were yellow, not like an animal, like old, faded light bulbs. They just glowed. There was no life in them, just this steady, awful light. I told them how I scrambled backwards, how my heel caught on something, how I fell. The sickening crunch as my back hit the old tool cabinet, the metallic screech of the scythe as it was dislodged, the flash of curved steel in the dim light. It didn't hurt at first. It was just cold, this sharp, biting cold across my chest. My voice was trembling now, but I didn't care. Let them see all of it. I remember looking down and seeing the blood welling up. It was so dark in the moonlight. My hand went to my collarbone, my fingers tracing the familiar crescent shape through the fabric of my shirt. I looked straight at the committee, at each of their impassive faces. I met Albright's gaze for a fleeting second before he looked away. "This is my truth," I said, my voice barely a whisper, but it carried across the dead air of the room. "It's not plagiarized from some forgotten horror novel. It's carved into my skin." No one moved. The hum of the ventilation system was the only sound.
For a moment, I thought I had done it. I thought the raw, undeniable reality of my words, of my wound, had finally broken through their wall of procedure and paperwork. The chairman blinked slowly. He shuffled some papers, the sound rustling like dry leaves. He glanced at Albright, then his eyes drifted to the back of the room, towards my father. "Mr. Vance," the chairman said, his tone polite, detached. "Thank you for coming on such short notice. We just need you to confirm one small detail for the record." I turned in my seat, a wave of relief washing over me. This was it, the final nail in Albright's coffin. I gave my dad a small, shaky smile. "Just nod, Dad. Just tell them yes." He looked off. He wasn't looking at the chairman. He was looking at me. His brow was furrowed, his mouth a tight line. It wasn't the look of a confident witness. It was the look of someone cornered, worried. "Could you please confirm," the chairman continued, his voice droning on, "if your family experienced any issues with birds or other wildlife in the shed at your former property?" The question hung in the air. My dad's eyes darted from me to the committee, then back to me again. He licked his lips. He looked pained, ashamed almost. Then he spoke. His voice was steady, calm. It was the most brutal sound I had ever heard. "I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but we've never owned a shed." He didn't stop there. The words kept coming, each one a hammer blow against the foundations of my entire life. "We've lived in a 12th floor apartment since Amy was born, right up until she left for college." The room didn't go quiet. It simply ceased to exist. The hum of the vents faded away. The faces of the committee members melted, their features running together like watercolor in the rain. Albright's smug expression, my father's pained one, they all blurred into a meaningless gray smudge. A shed, an owl, a scythe. My entire life. My art, my obsession, my defining moment. All of it built on a patch of ground that was never there. A building that was nothing but a ghost in my head. My hand, moving on its own, crept up to my chest. My fingers found the scar beneath my shirt. It was there, real, raised and rough against my cold fingertips. A physical piece of evidence for a fiction. A wound from an event that never happened. The light in the room seemed to be dimming, the corners darkening and creeping inwards.
Everything was turning to static. But through the noise, one question began to form. It started as a whisper and grew until it was a scream that echoed in the collapsing space of my mind, colder and sharper than any blade. If it wasn't the owl, if there was no shed, then what the hell was in that 12th floor apartment with